The first time I secretly paid my parents' mortgage, I was sitting in my car outside their bank, hands trembling as I transferred $2,800 from my private account. Dad had just lost his job of 23 years. Mom's arthritis was getting worse, and my brother Michael was too busy finding himself in his third year of grad school to notice our family was falling apart. That was 3 years ago. Now, I stood in our kitchen, washing dishes from another tense family dinner, listening to Michael complain about how I was taking advantage of our parents' generosity by still living at home at 28. "It's embarrassing," he declared, lounging on the couch while scrolling through his phone. "All my friends ask why my sister can't get her life together." I scrubbed harder at a pot, saying nothing. Let him think I was struggling. Let him believe I couldn't afford to move out. The truth was far more complicated. "Sarah," Mom called softly from her chair, her hands working at her knitting despite the pain. "You know you're always welcome here." Michael scoffed. "Mom, you're enabling her. She needs to grow up, get a real job instead of that online whatever she does." That whatever was my tech company, now valued at just over $40 million. But Michael didn't need to know that. None of them did, not yet. "I contribute to the household," I said quietly, drying my hands. "What? Buying groceries sometimes? Doing dishes?" "That's what teenagers do for allowance." Michael stood up, his 6-foot frame towering over me. "Meanwhile, I'm about to finish my PhD. I'm going to be a professor. I'll be able to really help the family." I bit back a laugh. His student loans could buy a small island. Dad shuffled in from the garage, looking older than his 60 years. The layoff had aged him, turned his hair gray, bent his shoulders with worry. He tried to smile, but I saw the strain around his eyes. "Everything okay in here?" "No, Dad, it's not okay." Michael turned to face him. "We need to talk about Sarah. She's almost 30, still living at home, barely working. It's not right." Dad sighed, sinking into his chair. "Michael, this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time. Look at this place. We're barely keeping up with repairs. Mom needs better medical care. And we've got a perfectly capable adult just freeloading." Mom's knitting needles went still. "Michael, that's enough." But he was just getting started. I'd seen this building for weeks, ever since he'd come home for an extended visit after his graduate housing fell through. His own failures were eating at him, and he needed someone to blame. "No, it's not enough. Sarah needs to hear this. You think I don't notice how tight things are? How you and Dad are struggling? Meanwhile, she sits in her room all day, working on her computer, probably just watching Netflix. I was actually on video calls with my development team in Singapore, but sure, Netflix sounded about right." "I pay my way," I said softly. "With what money?" He laughed harshly. "Your little web design business. Please. I saw your car, 10 years old and dented. You can barely afford gas." That car was a deliberate choice, like the simple clothes I wore, the lack of flashy accessories, the careful appearance of just getting by. I'd learned early that success is easier to build when no one's watching. "You don't know everything about my finances, Michael." "I know enough. God, it makes me sick seeing you take advantage like this. Mom and Dad are too nice to say it, but I'm not. You need to grow up, get a real job, move out." "Michael, please." Mom's voice shook. "Your sister helps in ways you don't see." If she only knew how true that was. The mortgage payments were just the start. I paid off their credit cards, set up a private medical fund for Mom's treatments, and quietly arranged for the home repairs they thought their insurance had mysteriously decided to cover. What ways? Michael demanded. Does she have some secret fortune we don't know about? He laughed at his own joke. I said nothing, just pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. 3 years of transactions, all carefully documented. Every payment, every transfer, every bill quietly handled, while they thought they were just managing to scrape by. Actually, I started, but Michael cut me off. No, I'm done listening to excuses. This is our parents' house, our family home, not your permanent crash pad. His voice rose to a shout. GT out of our parents' house. Well, we're just a freeloader. The room went silent except for Mom's sharp intake of breath. Dad's hands gripped his armchair, and something in me finally snapped. Interesting choice of words, Michael. I turned my phone screen toward him. Should I stop the monthly payments I've been making for the last 3 years? He squinted at the screen, then his eyes went wide. Mom started crying softly in her chair. What? What is this? Bank records, I said calmly. Every mortgage payment since Dad lost his job. Every medical bill for Mom's treatments. The new roof last summer. The property taxes. All paid from my account. That's impossible. He grabbed my phone, scrolling frantically through the transactions. These amounts, you can't. Can't what? Afford it? Funny how appearances can be deceiving. I took my phone back. You never asked what I actually do, Michael. You just assumed. Dad stood up slowly. Sarah, all this time. I nodded. You needed help. I could help. It seemed simple. But how? Michael sputtered. Your little web business is now one of the largest independent tech security firms in North America. I smiled slightly. Turns out all those hours in my room weren't spent on Netflix after all. Mom's tears flowed freely now. Why didn't you tell us? Because you needed to focus on healing, not worrying about paying bills. And because I looked at Michael. Some people need to learn the hard way not to judge what they don't understand. This is a joke, Michael said, but his voice wavered. Some kind of trick. Would you like to see the company financials too? The property deeds? Or maybe just next month's mortgage statement? I pulled up another screen. Oh look, it's due next week. Should I process the payment? Or would you like to handle it? He fell back onto the couch, face pale. Sarah, Dad's voice cracked. We never meant to. We should have. It's okay, Dad. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I could. Because that's what family really means. Helping each other without keeping score. I looked pointedly at Michael, who couldn't meet my eyes. But since we're being honest now, I took a deep breath. There's something else you should know about the house. The silence in our living room was deafening. Mom had stopped crying, but her hands clutched her knitting needles like anchors. Dad stood frozen by his chair, and Michael looked like someone had just pulled the world out from under his feet. What about the house? Dad finally asked. I took a deep breath. Remember last year when the bank called about refinancing? That wasn't exactly what happened. Sarah, Mom's voice trembled. What did you do? I pulled another document up on my phone. The house was underwater. The previous mortgage was predatory. Interest rates set to spike. Balloon payments coming due. They were going to foreclose. Dad sank back into his chair. But they offered us new terms. No, I said gently. I bought the house, paid it off completely. The monthly payments you thought were going to the bank. They've been going into a savings account I set up for your retirement. The sound of shattering glass made everyone jump. Michael had dropped his water glass, shards spreading across the hardwood floor I'd had replaced last spring. You own our house, he whispered. Technically, it's in a trust, for Mom and Dad's benefit. They can live here as long as they want. Never have to worry about payments or maintenance. I looked at my brother, and no one can ever threaten to kick anyone out. Michael's face flushed dark red. The irony of his earlier outburst wasn't lost on him. Why keep this secret? Dad asked. All this time, we thought we were barely hanging on. Because you needed to feel normal, I said. After the layoff, after Mom's diagnosis, you needed stability, not charity. So I found a way to help without damaging your dignity. Dignity. Michael laughed sharply. You've been playing us like puppets, watching us struggle, letting us think. Letting you think what? I cut in. That I was a failure. That I needed your constant judgment and criticism. That somehow your unfinished PhD made you more successful than my little web business. He flinched. The company is worth $40 million. By the way, I added quietly. We're expanding into Europe next month. That's what those late-night calls in my room were about, coordinating with our teams in London and Berlin. Mom's knitting needles clattered to the floor. 40 million? Give or take a few million depending on the market. I shrugged. But that's not important right now. What's important is that you understand I'm not here because I have to be. I'm here because I choose to be. But your car, Michael protested weakly. Your clothes. Our choices. I finished. I drive that car because it's reliable and paid for. I wear simple clothes because I'm comfortable in them. Not everyone needs to show off their success, Michael. Dad cleared his throat. The medical bills, your mother's treatments, all taken care of, including the experimental therapy they said insurance wouldn't cover. I smiled at Mom. That's why you've been feeling better lately. You've been getting the best care available, not just what we could afford. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks, but these weren't from sadness. I don't understand, Michael said, his voice small. Why let me treat you like that? Why not just tell me to shut up? Because you needed to learn something. I walked over to help him clean up the broken glass. Success isn't about appearances. It's not about titles or degrees or what other people think. It's about what you actually do, how you help others, how you build something real. As I carefully picked up the glass pieces, I continued. Every time you mocked my job, criticized my choices, tried to make me feel small, I was signing contracts worth more than your student loans. Every time you bragged about your future professor's salary, I was paying the property taxes on this house. Sarah, Mom interrupted, the savings account you mentioned has enough to cover your expenses for the next 30 years. I said, conservatively invested, professionally managed. You never have to worry about money again. Dad started to speak, but his voice caught. He tried again. We should have seen. No, I said firmly. You shouldn't have. That was the point. You needed to heal, to focus on each other, to get through the hard times without pride getting in the way. I could help, so I did. But now, Michael asked. Why tell us now? I stood up, glass shards tinkling in my palm. Because it's time. Because Mom's health is better, Dad's starting his consulting business, and you. I looked at him directly. You need to understand that the world is bigger than your assumptions. The grandfather clock in the hall, another quiet repair I'd arranged, chimed 9 times. Outside, a car pulled into our driveway, headlights sweeping across the living room windows. That's probably Jamie, I said, checking my phone. My CFO. We have some contracts to review. Here. Michael asked incredulously. Why not? It's my house. I smiled slightly. Well, technically, Mom and Dad's house. I just maintain it. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Mom started to get up, but I gestured for her to stay seated. There's one more thing you should know, I said, heading for the door. About that graduate housing that fell through. The doorbell chimed again as I reached for the handle. Behind me, I could feel my family's eyes following my every move, still trying to process everything they'd learned in the last hour. Jamie stood on the porch, elegant in her business suit despite the late hour, tablet in hand. Good evening, Ms. Anderson. I have those property documents you requested. Michael's sharp intake of breath told me he'd caught the significance of those words. Property documents? He asked weakly. I turned back to my family, letting Jamie step into the foyer. Remember how your graduate housing mysteriously fell through last month? Right after that incident with the department head? Michael's face went pale. He'd been bragging for weeks about telling off his supervisor, claiming academic integrity when really he'd missed several teaching deadlines. The University Housing Board didn't cancel your contract, I continued. I bought the building. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Mom's knitting needles, which she'd retrieved from the floor, went still. You? What? Michael collapsed onto the couch. Anderson Properties LLC purchased the graduate housing complex 3 weeks ago, Jamie explained professionally, along with several other university-adjacent properties. Dad's eyes widened. Anderson, your mother's maiden name. I nodded. It's easier to do business without the family connection sometimes, especially in real estate. So you kicked me out? Michael's voice cracked. To prove a point. No, I said softly. I terminated your housing contract because you were making life hell for the maintenance staff, ignoring building regulations, and treating the property manager, my employee, like she was beneath you. He flinched, remembering his words to the middle-aged woman who tried to talk to him about noise complaints. Actions have consequences, Michael. Even for family, especially for family. Jamie cleared her throat delicately. Should we review the quarterly reports now? In a moment, I turned back to my family. There's one last thing we need to discuss. Mom leaned forward in her chair. More secrets? No more secrets, I promised, but some choices to make. I sat down in the armchair opposite Michael, smoothing my simple skirt, a deliberate choice that now felt almost like a costume I no longer needed to wear. This house, your medical care, the savings account, it's all set up, irreversible. You'll never have to worry about money again. I looked at my parents, but Michael's situation is different. My brother stiffened. You have 2 options, I continued, meeting his eyes. Option 1. You can move back into graduate housing. Different building, same complex. Fresh start, clean slate. Keep working on your PhD, but with the understanding that actions have consequences and privilege comes with responsibility. And option 2, he asked quietly. Come work for me. Learn the business from the ground up, like I did. No shortcuts, no special treatment. Start in customer service, move up based on merit. Customer service? He almost choked. But I'm almost a PhD. And I'm a CEO who still answers client calls when needed, I replied. Success isn't a title, Michael. It's what you do with it. Jamie stepped forward, tablet ready. The employment contract is prepared, if you're interested. Standard entry-level position, full benefits, opportunity for advancement based on performance. Michael looked at the tablet, then at me, then at our parents. Why are you doing this? Because you're my brother, I said simply. And because everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes. Even arrogant big brothers who think success only looks one way. Mom's eyes filled with tears again. Sarah, we never knew. You weren't supposed to know. I reminded her gently. But now you do. And things will be different. Different how? Dad asked. For starters, no more pretending. I'll still live here. When I'm not traveling for work, because I want to, not because I have to. Mom's medical treatments will continue, but now you'll understand why money isn't an issue. And Michael, I turned back to my brother, you'll make your choice. PhD or customer service. But either way, you'll do it honestly, understanding exactly who's providing the opportunity. Michael sat quietly for a long moment, staring at his hands. Finally, he looked up, and I saw something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Respect. Customer service, he said quietly. I want to learn. Really learn. I nodded, hiding my surprise. Maybe he could grow after all. Jamie, the contract please. I took the tablet, signed it, and handed it to Michael. You start Monday. Don't be late. As he signed, his hand trembling slightly, Mom spoke up. What about your company? Your real life? This is my real life, Mom. All of it. The company, the properties, this house, this family. I just compartmentalized for a while. Now we can be honest. And the car? Dad asked, a slight smile playing at his lips. I laughed. The car stays. It reminds me where I started. Where we all started. Jamie cleared her throat again. Ms. Anderson, about those contracts? Right. I stood up. Family meeting adjourned. Michael, HR will email you orientation details. Mom, your next treatment is Thursday. I'll drive you. Dad, let's talk about your consulting business tomorrow. I have some contacts who might be interested. As I followed Jamie to my home office, formerly known as my little bedroom, I heard Michael ask quietly, the building manager I was rude to, is she still? She's your new supervisor. I called back without turning around. I suggest you practice your apology before Monday. The sound of his groan followed me down the hall, but under it, I heard something else. Mom's laughter, Dad's chuckle, the sounds of a family finding its footing in a new reality. Sometimes the biggest success isn't in what you build, but in how you reveal it. And sometimes the hardest person to prove yourself to isn't your family, but yourself. I'd done both. Now it was time to see what we could build together in the light of truth instead of the shadow of assumptions.